Have you ever wondered how one battle could change the course of a nation's history forever? Well, get ready, because today we're diving into the epic story of a man whose ambition and iron will did just that. We're talking about William the Conqueror, the Duke of Normandy, who crossed the English Channel and redrew the map of England. Let's rewind to the early 11th century. Our story begins not in England, but across the water in Normandy, a powerful duchy in northern France. Around 1028, a boy named William was born. Now his start in life was anything but glamorous. He was the illegitimate son of Duke Robert I of Normandy and a woman named Herleva. This earned him the rather unflattering nickname, William the Bastard, early on. But don't let that fool you. This was a man destined for greatness, or at least, he was determined to seize it. Tragedy and opportunity struck early. When William was just 7 or 8 years old, his father, Duke Robert, died while returning from a pilgrimage. Suddenly, this young boy was the new Duke of Normandy. As you can imagine, being a child ruler with a questionable claim to the title made him a prime target. The Norman barons, a notoriously rowdy and ambitious bunch, saw a chance to grab power for themselves. William's childhood was a brutal survival course. He witnessed assassinations, dodged conspiracies, and learned to trust no one. This forged him into a ruthless, cunning, and formidable leader. By the time he was a young man, he had crushed rebellions and solidified his control over Normandy with an iron fist. He wasn't just a survivor, he was a warrior and a brilliant strategist. Now, let's hop across the Channel to England. The English throne was occupied by King Edward the Confessor. Edward was a pious ruler, but he had a big problem. He had no children, no direct heir. This created a massive power vacuum, and several powerful men across Europe began eyeing the English crown. One of these men was our very own William, Duke of Normandy. So what was William's claim? It was a bit complicated. William claimed that years earlier, King Edward, who was his distant cousin, had promised him the throne. He also claimed that a powerful English earl named Harold Godwinson had once been shipwrecked in Normandy, and, as a captive, had sworn an oath to support William's claim to the English throne. We don't have definitive proof of these promises, but in William's mind, they were as good as law. He believed the English crown was his by right. Fast forward to January 1066. King Edward the Confessor dies. The English council, the Witan, doesn't waste any time. They immediately crown the most powerful man in England, Harold Godwinson, as the new king. From William's perspective, this was an outrageous betrayal. Harold had broken his sacred oath. Whether the oath was real or not, it was the perfect justification for what William had been planning all along: an invasion. Back in Normandy, William began a massive undertaking. He wasn't just going to sail over with a few buddies. He was preparing for a full-scale war. He started a brilliant PR campaign, securing the Pope's blessing for his invasion, which essentially framed it as a holy quest. He convinced the nobles of Normandy and surrounding regions to join him, promising them land and riches in England. He then commissioned the construction of a massive fleet of ships, hundreds of them, to carry his army of thousands of knights, archers, and foot soldiers across the treacherous English Channel. This was a logistical masterpiece. But King Harold in England had his own problems. Just as he was preparing for William's invasion from the south, another threat emerged from the north. The fierce Viking king of Norway, Harald Hardrada, who also had a claim to the English throne, decided it was the perfect time to invade. So in September 1066, Harold Godwinson had to march his army all the way to the north of England to face the Vikings. He won a decisive victory at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, a truly incredible feat. But his army was exhausted and battered. And then the worst possible news arrived. Just 3 days after his victory, Harold learned that William's fleet had finally landed on the southern coast of England, at Pevensey. Can you imagine? He had just fought a brutal battle, and now he had to turn his exhausted army around and march them hundreds of miles back south to face a fresh, well-equipped Norman force. It was a race against time. On October 14, 1066, the two armies finally met near a small town called Hastings. This would become one of the most famous battles in history. King Harold and his English army took up a strong defensive position on top of a hill, forming a tight shield wall that was almost impossible to break. For hours, William's Norman knights charged up the hill again and again, but they couldn't break the English line. The arrows of his archers rained down, but the shields held firm. The battle raged all day. It looked like a stalemate. William knew he had to do something drastic. According to the stories, the Normans used a clever and risky tactic. They pretended to retreat. Seeing their enemy running, some of the English soldiers, eager for victory, broke their shield wall formation and charged down the hill after them. It was a fatal mistake. The Norman knights turned around, cutting down the isolated English soldiers. They repeated this trick, gradually weakening the English line. As evening approached, a final Norman assault was launched. In the chaos of the fighting, a stray arrow struck King Harold in the eye, and he fell. With their king dead, the English resistance crumbled. The battle was over. William had won. He wasn't the bastard anymore. From this day forward, he would be known as William the Conqueror. After the victory at Hastings, William marched towards London. He didn't just walk in. He burned and pillaged the surrounding countryside, a brutal but effective way to intimidate any remaining opposition into submission. The English lords, seeing the writing on the wall, surrendered. On Christmas Day, 1066, in Westminster Abbey, William, Duke of Normandy, was crowned King of England. But conquering the battlefield was one thing. Conquering a whole country was another. The English people were not happy about their new French-speaking king. For the next few years, William faced constant rebellions across the land. But he was just as ruthless in peace as he was in war. He responded to these uprisings with overwhelming force, most famously in the harrying of the North, where he systematically destroyed crops and livestock, leading to a devastating famine that crushed the rebellion and left a scar on the region for generations. To solidify his rule, William initiated a complete overhaul of English society. He replaced the English aristocracy with his loyal Norman barons, giving them vast estates of land in exchange for their military service. This established the feudal system in England. He built hundreds of castles all over the country, including the famous Tower of London. These weren't grand palaces. They were intimidating stone fortresses, constant visible symbols of Norman power and control. Perhaps William's most lasting legacy was the Domesday Book. In 1085, he ordered a comprehensive survey of his entire kingdom. He wanted to know exactly who owned what, how much it was worth, and how much tax he could collect from it. It was an unprecedented administrative achievement for its time, giving us an incredible snapshot of life in 11th century England. It also showed just how absolute his power had become. William the Conqueror's reign forever changed England. The Norman conquest brought a new ruling class, a new language, French, which heavily influenced the development of modern English, and new systems of government and land ownership. The England that emerged from his conquest was a nation with stronger ties to continental Europe and a more centralized, powerful monarchy. William ruled England until his death in 1087. The boy who started as an outcast became one of the most powerful and influential figures in European history. His story is a dramatic saga of ambition, brutality, and genius. It's a powerful reminder of how a single person's will can shape the destiny of millions and change the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more epic stories. Let me know in the comments which historical figure you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next video.